In this video, I'm going to show you the latest trends in design and architecture that I discovered at Expo 2025 in Osaka, Japan. These are trends you can actually use whatever you design your homes, interior or exterior. Okay, let's talk about mirrors. When it comes to architectural and interior techniques, mirrors were used a lot at the exhibition. And one of the most memorable examples was the Thailand Pavilion, where tradition was combined with modernity. At first glance, the building looks like it has a classic gable roof. But if you look closer, you see that half of the roof is real, while the other half is reflected in the mirrored facade. As a result, the space is visually doubled. It's a beautiful and striking idea. A traditional form used in a contemporary way. Okay, I also like the facade of the Null 2 Pavilion. It's made up of cubic elements stacked on top of each other. At first glance, it seems like a simple structure. Guys, these facades are made of a special film. See how it reflects light. That's why it looks like the wall is kind of vibrating. But thanks to the mirror film and the details inside each cube, the facade begins to almost tremble. It creates the illusion that the glass is vibrating during the earthquake. A very unusual effect, both mesmerizing and a little unsettling. And if you step inside this pavilion, you're thrown into a real techno-psychedelic experience. The whole space is built on reflection and light projections. Above your head, there is a giant robotic arm holding a cube. When the show begins, screen on the ceiling, on the floor light up. Black and white graphic elements appear to the music. The arm starts moving, the mirror amplifies the effect, and the whole thing turns into powerful techno performance. Definitely not for the faint of heart. The impression is strong, almost hypnotic. For residential interiors, it's hardly applicable. Of course, but for contemporary art museum or creative spaces, it's a brilliant solution. Moving to more practical techniques. In the Portugal Pavilion, they're hanging mirrored panels from a dark ceiling, which visually expanded the space. In other pavilions, mirrors were used on the floor. For example, you can see your own reflection among bushes, as if you were looking into the surface of water. Also, their beautiful effect. The Portugal Pavilion itself told a story about the sea and the problem of the ocean pollution with plastic. And this was reflected in the architecture. Inside and on the facade, ropes made from recycled marine plastic were suspended. In this case, you can see the ropes hanging down. There is a metal mesh and the ropes are attached to it with special fittings. Between the ropes, there are also hanging light bulbs that add an extra rhythm to the whole composition. A similar idea was used in the Philippines Pavilion. At the entrance, visitors were greeted by hanging paper elements attached to a metal grid. But here it wasn't just about form. Light played a role as well. Images were projected onto the hanging pieces, creating a play of light and shadow. It looks very lively and dynamic. This technique can be easily adapted to interiors too. Suspended elements with projections instantly make a ceiling unusual and bring a sense of life into the space. In the Philippines Pavilion, I especially liked how projectors were used. They were aimed at tapestries, and it felt like the fabric literally came to life. Some of the patterns started moving, curving, spinning, and my favorite moment was the wave projection. A huge wave appeared on the tapestry, and it looked as if a person was surfing on it, and it looked really cool. And this technique can be easily used in interiors too. Continuing with this idea, the Futura City Pavilion also had some interesting fabric solution, where partitions were made in several layers. The first completely transparent, the second denser, the third transparent again, and the fourth blackout, which fully closed off the space. Images were projected onto all these layers. creating a strong sense of depth. Another cool feature in the future city was the use of corner screens. Images were projected onto a square or rectangle from several sides at once. As you walked past, it created a full sense of three-dimensional image. One that impressed me most was the pavilion nicknamed the Hut. During the day, it was simply a building shaped like a hat, but the evening, its smooth surface turned into a giant screen. They showed cartoons, there is super high quality with incredible resolution. And from here we smoothly move to the next trend. Building facades turning into screens. Essentially, it was made two massive screens with American symbols, with a cube in the center. Architecture is clearly moving further towards screen facades, remind us of movies about the future. Now about the USA Pavilion. It reminded me of a real musical. Right at the entrance you are greeted by a young guy. Very first minutes you're pulled into this atmosphere. Fun, playful, informal, and the core idea is simple. Let's do something together, let's collaborate. Inside this is reflected really well too. On the walls there is a hexagons with images symbolizing American culture and ingenuity. And one of the hexagons is mirrored. And you can take a picture, become part of this collaboration together with the USA. The first room is completely white, again this trend. But thanks to projectors they constantly change color and mood. And then a character appears, a little star, that jumps from one screen to another screen and starts singing a song. And the music is made in such a way that it really sticks in your head. Like one of those catchy tunes. And the message is simple. Let's do something together, and together we can achieve a lot. From a meaning perspective, it may sound a bit cliché. Then we move into the halls with screens showing a landscape of American cities and US nature. And a really cool detail is that the edges of the screens are mirrored. The images continues into them and feel endless, larger and more expansive. At the bottom the mirrors are set at an angle, creating the effect that the picture is floating in the air. And the next part is American Space Program, which ends with standing in a huge hangar right under a rocket. In front of you, to the left, right, above, massive screens, and on the one side an entire mirror wall doubles the space. A countdown begins and the effect of launch is created. We take off on the rocket and first fly to the space station and meeting American astronauts. Went to the moon, then Mars, and even the distant planets of the solar system. Into deep space. The sense of immersion is powerful. When you leave the pavilion, you are greeted by a young American musician while performing. A pianist and a girl on a trumpet. They play with so much soul that was generally moving. And you can really feel how strong the American art school tradition is, and how much they put into it. If we talk about the US Pavilion as a whole, the impression was mixed. And the message, "we're so great, let's do something together," felt a bit too banal. And at times it seems like they were just trying to sugarcoat things. But in terms of design and presentation, everything was done on a really high level. The musical format, the involvement of characters, the way the space turned into an amusement park, where the interior isn't just wall but an attraction for people, that was impressive. It was funny that in our VIP group there was also the director of Universal Studio, I think from Beijing or Shanghai, and he came specifically to see it from the perspective of an amusement park, and that says a lot. In the pavilion, architecture and interior design are perceived exactly as a platform for emotions, like a theme park for people. That's a very powerful approach to design. I actually talk about this in my video on emotional design on my channel. Definitely check it out if you haven't yet. It shows how you can use this approach in your own home design. And finally, the space story. A simple, clear, spectacular idea that always works. People today live with their eyes on the future, dreaming about the space, and that's beautifully reflected in architecture, interiors and technology. And the US Pavilion showcases this in the brightest way possible. Expo is a massive international event. 160 countries come together to showcase their progress across all kinds of industries. There was no way I could miss it. I travel a lot and study design and architecture trends around the world, so I can bring the best ideas into my own projects and share them with you. Whatever you're looking for, inspiration for your own home, or just wanted to spend your time watching something useful and beautiful made, this video is for you. I want to show you is the golden ring. Right now I'm inside the largest wooden structure in the world, officially listed in the Guinness World Records. The idea is that this giant ring connects and wraps around the entire expo site, bringing together pavilions from different countries into one big space. It's all about connection. Another key idea is sustainability. It's made of wood, a renewable and eco-friendly material. The structure can be taken apart and reused elsewhere, which is a big architectural trend today. What's also great is how it combines tradition and modern design. It's inspired by traditional Japanese temple construction, where everything fits together without nails. Here, for safety, they used round wooden joints that slot into each other. It looks really interesting. So this ancient technique now has a modern shape in the form of this wooden ring. The material is glued laminated timber, which means several layers of wood pressed and bonded together. That makes it strong and flexible. Following this example, you can create new spaces. For example, cover beams with glass, keep the wooden structure exposed in a modern home. That would look very beautiful. Another important trend that runs through the whole exhibition is the reuse of materials. The golden ring was designed so it can be taken apart and reused. Of course, it also has a practical side. The rings connects all the pavilions, and you can walk on top of it, absorbing different architectural technique and join the stunning panoramic views. Continuing with the theme of wood, you could see it everywhere at the exhibition. Wooden elements appear in many of the pavilions, but bamboo definitely deserves special attention. There were entire bamboo pavilions like the one from Malaysia, which was designed entirely in this style. Inside that pavilion they even had a full bamboo tree. And on top of that, Malaysia was treating guests to its cuisine. Vic and I tried their delicious roti with milk tea, and we absolutely love it. As you walk further through the grounds, you notice bamboo benches with metal frames. They look really cool, especially where the long bamboo poles stick out from the structure. And here's where another important trend shows up: the use of renewable materials. Bamboo is a perfect example. It grows back quickly and can be actually used both in architecture and interiors. A tip: bring it into your homes. Bamboo chandeliers, panels, hanging elements, furniture and even benches. Not only will it look great, but it will also show that your interior or building was created with care for nature and sustainability. And in the same direction, the Japanese pavilion worked really well, clearly demonstrating the idea of sustainability through wooden materials. The Japanese are probably the most passionate people when it comes to recycling and reusing materials. Just look at their cities. You can often find 5 or 6 different bins for sorting and separating waste, if you can find them. And at the exhibition, the Japanese pavilion was entirely dedicated to ecology. The building itself was constructed from wooden CLT panels, and it was designed so that these panels can be reused. The architects built the idea of a second life for the materials right into the project. The panels can easily be reused in other buildings. On top of that, the pavilion also functions like a recycling factory and symbolizes the cycle of life, where every object has a chance to be reborn. Even the shape of the building, circular, spiral, reflects this idea. Guests walk across bridges in a dark space, where the lighting shows the way. Here, light divides movement and helps divide the space into zones. Beneath the bridges, there is a multi-level area with a symbolic recycling conveyor. The pavilion even has a small working plant that processes waste and partly generates its own electricity. Sure, it's only 1 or 2%, but the idea is different. To show what's possible and inspire people by example. That's also something we can take away. If you don't have the resources to make everything 100% eco-friendly, you can still add something that points in the right direction. The idea here is that they create a special kind of plastic that breaks down in salt water. It doesn't disappear in a month, but within a few years it completely dissolves, which is great for the environment. And switching the lights on and off creates the effect of the spaces appearing and disappearing. This technique can be used both in buildings and interiors for zoning rooms with high ceilings. Another trend strongly showcased in the pavilion is the digitalization of space. In one of the halls, you feel like you're inside a computer world. Neon green tubes, mirrors on the walls and ceilings, endless reflection, added a light panel, and suddenly it feels as if you're inside the computer program, but in our world. This trick can also be adapted in interior design, for example, in a hallway with mirrors, lighting, and structural elements. The effect is amplified by the mirrors, which make the space feel infinite, while the glowing tubes reflect in every direction. In general, digitalization is really popular right now. Here is how we use in our own project in Bali. In the center of the atrium, there will be a large orange sphere, as if it were taken straight out of 3D Max. And the roof will look as though they've been cut and separated inside the program. Modern technology also has their place. Recycled materials are being used for 3D printing furniture and decor. If a piece doesn't turn out right, it can simply be recycled again and reprinted. The idea here is simple. You don't have to build a house entirely out of recycled materials. It's enough to add just one item, a table or a chair made from recycling plastic. It becomes a symbol of caring of nature and reason to share that story with your guests. And this is where the Japanese bring the exhibition to a close. They clearly show how bacteria break down different materials, turning them into gas, fuel, or liquid. They also present an example of a new bioplastic that decomposes in salt water within a few years and helps address the problem of ocean pollution. To explain all this in a fun and accessible way, the Japanese turned to Asia's beloved culture of cartoonishness. To make it easier for people to understand, they use fun visuals. In Asia, Hello Kitty is super popular, so we showed bacteria shaped like Hello Kitty. Each one is recycling something different. It's a fun and simple way to explain the process. Cartoon characters are the next trend. Both buildings and interior are increasingly stepping into unreal, cartoon-like spaces. Why is this happening? It's simple. The people who grow up with cartoon heroes are now adults. For example, those who watched Transformers are now over 30 and some are already in their 40s. And the culture they grow up on is now starting to show up in architecture and design. Right in the middle of the square stands a giant figure, basically a real monumentum to a transformer. And honestly, it looks pretty awesome. Critics might say this is childish, but I'll disappoint them. This trend goes further, straight into architecture. A bionic building with a flowing form and on the roof an anime character. Cartoonishness shows up not only directly but also through colors and shapes. For instance, a giant smiley sphere in warm terracotta shade. Or for example, Singaporean Pavilion, built as a big red sphere. Sure, it's not literally a smiley face, but the shape and color threw us back to the bright imagery of cartoons. And the spherical elements are becoming a trend in their own right, and increasingly used today in both architecture and interior design. Okay, spheres. Take the Netherlands Pavilion. For example, there's a sphere is placed right inside the building's interior. Spheres appear not only as shapes but also as screens. At the exhibition there were a lot of spherical screens displaying different images. Guys, this looks absolutely stunning. If before we were used to flat screens, now they can be three-dimensional and when placed on a thin, almost invisible stand, they look as if they're floating on the air. This technique can easily be used in interior too. It adds a sense of modernity and gives the space a unique effect. If you walk closer to Singaporean Pavilion, the most interesting part starts inside. There is a spiral that takes you higher and higher as you move from one space to another. Okay, Singapore is always associated with plants and gardens, and they put this off in a really cool way. They use a white model and shaped it to look like plants, but keep everything in white. The result is a white interior that feels like something out of 3D Max. Like you've made a model but haven't added the texture yet. This technique is becoming more and more popular these days. And of course we used in our project too. In one case we designed a bathroom entirely in white. And it looks amazing. This approach can also be applied in interiors. Create a space that's entirely white or incorporate individual white elements and then use lighting and projections to create different effects. I really liked the Spanish pavilion as well. When you walk into one of the rooms, it feels like the whole space is filled with a warm red color. But if you look closely, you see that light boxes are installed on the ceiling. And they're the ones coloring the room. As the color changes, the entire space shifts, turning orange, then red, then yellow. But the base interior itself is white. So it's the light that completely transforms the atmosphere of the room. Check this out. It's a metal frame with rectangular openings where you can hang postcards. Some have images, others are just color blocks. And together they create a really cool wall. It looks absolutely stunning. Our pavilions are also using white interiors. Look at the ceiling. These panels have small perforations and don't reach all the way up. That space hides things like air conditioning system while keeping the design light and clean. This trick works best if you have high ceilings. The next pavilion, of course, is China. Architecturally, it looks like a rectangle with slightly curved forms and slatted wooden structure. The facade itself is made of wood, bamboo and bamboo panels. And that immediately sets the tone. The pavilion reflects the trends towards sustainability. When you step inside, the first thing that greets you is a welcome from Chinese space station. Right away, you feel the emphasis on technology. The screens are especially impressive. The Chinese know how to build massive screens spanning 4 to 5 stories. And the quality is truly outstanding, with bright, vivid images. One such giant screen is right at the entrance and the trend is obvious. The screen is round. On these projections they show traditional Chinese painting and hand-drawn artworks. It's very beautiful and creates a wonderful atmosphere. When it comes to an interesting technique, the projectors are installed on the ceiling and letters seems to flow from the wall into the floors like a river leading people deeper into the pavilion. And inside there's ancient Chinese artifacts that are thousands of years old. This isn't just an exhibit. These are transparent TVs. You can see the object behind them and look at it from different angles through the screen. Of course, you cannot touch the artifact, but it's a digital images. Still, the feeling is amazing. Everyone has always wanted to touch a museum exhibit, and here you can, at least digitally. This technology is now developing quickly. Such transparent displays are starting to be used in advertising, commerce, and even in homes. With the press of a button, Additional information about the object appears. You're not just looking at exhibits, you are interacting with them. And that's a great technique that can easily be transformed into architecture or interior design. For example, you could make a glass partition and project images of flames onto it. Or imagine making an atrium at home with a tree and projecting different images onto the glass partitions. Rain, snow, or something else. The effect is really powerful. And of course, cartoonishness. How could Asia be without it? Animals that live in China are shown as cartoon characters. This is a trend running through the whole exhibition and architecture in general. Cartoon, anime, or toy-like characters are appearing in both interiors and facades. If before architects only made subtle references, like the koalas crawling on the side of a building in Hong Kong, now a full-on cartoon characters is perceived as completely normal. Another cool detail was the ramps. Overall, there were very few stairs at the exhibition, mostly ramps. This is of course for accessibility and inclusivity, but at the same time it's also a trend in contemporary architecture. And in the Chinese pavilion the ramps were beautifully integrated. Alongside them was a huge wall onto which traditional Chinese paintings were projected. It looked stunning. And this technique can also be adapted for the home. Projecting an image onto an entire wall edge to edge, turning it into a living painting. There are contrasts too. Right next to each other you see traditional wooden bas reliefs that reference communist style. The eco-friendliness of wood is paired with communist motifs. Of course, China couldn't leave out its space program. It's a huge source of national pride. They show that they landed on both sides of the moon, and they were the very first to touch down on the far backside and bring back soil samples. And they also showcase technology for underwater research. Altogether, China presents itself here as a country of technology, achieving a lot both on Earth and in space. At the end, they gave me virtual reality glasses. I was clearing snows, throwing snowballs, feeding birds, all of it created in augmented reality. To sum it up, the Chinese pavilion is a blend of tradition, technology, sustainability and national identity. Maybe it lacked a single cohesive storyline like the US pavilion had, but it still made strong impression. And it very clearly highlighted the trends of incorporating national elements into architecture and interior design. And national identity, that's a trend in many countries right now, in Russia, in Arab world, all over the globe. And China is no exception. For example, in my own apartment in Hong Kong, I add elements of Slavic culture into the decor. If you haven't seen it yet, I have a whole series on my channel about setting up the apartment. And it's already near the finale. So check it out, I think you'll find it interesting. Let's keep talking about the idea of national identity. And one of the most beautiful pavilions, in my opinion, was the Qatar Pavilion. It's shaped like a traditional Arab sailing boat. Around it are pools of water. A brilliant technique that can also be used in the architecture of villas or houses in warm climates. The facade itself is made of light fabric, forming corridors and passageways along the perimeter inside this fabric shell. It all looks very beautiful, and inside there are lots of cool features that could be used at home or interior design. For example, partitions made of transparent tubes filled with layers of colored sand. They look like desert landscape, really unusual. In our idea, walls made of curtains. This is a separate trend that appeared in other pavilions too. In Qatar, they use dark curtains with metallic dots, which bring to mind either a starry sky or an underwater world. In the center of the hall stands metallic volumes with cutouts showing a landscape of Qatar. And also very interesting. The next pavilion was Bahrain. It was also designed in the shape of an Arab boat, light and airy combined wood with light-colored fabric. It looked beautiful, but inside it was very hot and staying there was tough. The Saudi Arabia Pavilion, on the other hand, was a bit of disappointment. From a country currently building mega projects, I expected more. The main theme of this pavilion was oasis. One cool feature was the tilted panels you could lean against to watch a film about the future NEOM project. And these panels vibrated and produced sound, so you could literally feel the bass with your body. They also showed how they're 3D printing corals. And these white elements were mounted on the wall and repeating many times. And that points to another trend, repeating elements, often in white. We saw this in Japan with Hello Kitty and in other pavilions too. Today, such structures can be used as accent walls in interiors. Before, we would paint an accent wall in a color, but now you can create it from repeating forms. A really cool solution. And then comes to the pavilion of the United Arab Emirates. From the outside, it has glass walls, while inside there is a colonnade that looks like a forest. If you look closely, the columns are clamped in palm wood and bound with metal rods. The wooden strips were specially brought in from the Emirates, and the result is a beautiful effect, a mix of sustainability, traditions, and the use of renewable materials. One of the trends represented here is the connection between technology and tradition. Here you can see a straw rocket flying into space. The United Arab Emirates is telling the story of its space program, how they build satellites, how astronauts go into orbit, do sports, pour water, and much more. In short, the mix of technology and tradition reflects a trend that comes from identity, which is now very popular and continues to develop. A very clever technique. You take a modern technological object, for example, a rocket, a plane, a lunar rover, and make it out of wood or straw. It's a cool contrast you could also use in interior design. Another memorable detail was a carpet of an unusual shape. Not rectangular, but with torn shoreline edges. It was made from natural materials, and in an interior it looks very lovely. Overall, the UAE Pavilion showed how traditions and modern technology can be woven together. There were rockets, solar panels, scientific achievements, all intertwined with palm, wooden and traditional craftsmanship. And here I want to pause and highlight an important point. Architecture and design become truly interesting when there is an idea behind them. A beautiful form or an interior without meaning can work, but when there is a story, that's a whole different level. That's exactly how we approach projects in our studio. Our studio's project Private Jet Villa has recently become a finalist at the World Architectural Festival. Basically the Oscars of the architecture world. It's an incredible recognition, since the festival brings together the most innovative projects from around the globe. First, we talk with a client and look for the idea. Our Private Jet Villa project, for example, is a story about recycling an old airplane while at the same time creating luxury. Two things that don't seem compatible. It's like an attraction for adults, where you can imagine having your own private jet landing anywhere you want. And today, you've touched down on the edge of a cliff in Bali, watching a magnificent sunset while sitting on the airplane wing. When ideas are built into a project, whether in an interior or an architecture, the result always reaches a new level. And that's exactly what the pavilions at the exhibition show. Meaning in the architecture should always be there. The next pavilion is Italy. Its main idea is to show the collaboration between two countries, Japan and Italy. From the outside, the pavilion looks like a wooden structure in style of Japanese temples. Inside, it resembles that Italian Colosseum. This blending of two cultures turned out to be very interesting. While you're waiting in a line, you can see various crafts that Italy is famous for. Venetian glass, mosaics, frescoes and scenes of sport like cycling. When you step inside, you enter a hall with comfortable low chairs set on a podium. A great idea to take note of for a home theater. Then the show begins. In front of you is a large screen showing a film about what Italy is famous for. But the most fascinating part comes when the film ends. The screens rotate, opening the way for people to pass into the main hall. And it's not just a screen, it's also a set of doors. This technique could be used in hotels, in public spaces, and even in apartments. When a partition doubles as a screen and then opens up to lead you further inside. The interior of the pavilion is done in black, except on the ceiling. The ceiling is wooden, a great way to create contrast. On the wall, projectors display images that look like sketches from Renaissance artists. Against the black background, it looks very striking. A modern space with a clear reference of culture and history. The decorative objects were also memorable. For example, an Italian vase shaped like hearts, where you can place flowers into each individual opening. Here's a cool idea for mixing something historical with a modern interior. Take a classic painting, put it inside a glass box or aquarium, and it instantly looks elegant and unexpected. Don't thank me, just use the idea. Overall, the Italian pavilion is about connecting the Renaissance with modern technology. Asian sculptures and paintings highlighted against a black background turn into art objects. Plus, there is plenty of furniture and decor. For example, the famous flower chair, which I've already seen all over the world. Even in China they replicate it. Or sculptures made from crumpled bronze sheets, inspired by medieval painting. For Italians, design is in their blood. You can see how they know how to turn any idea into a beautiful object. On the roof of the pavilion there is a park, a green zone with a view over the entire pedestrian ring of the exhibition. Walking there is really pleasant. And this ties into another architectural trend, greenery. Modern buildings are increasingly turning into parks. Balconies, rooftops, and entrances are being filled with plants. When we design our projects, we build on the idea that nature reclaims what once was hers. Architecture becomes overgrown, blending with plants. And I believe that's the right way, because historically, humans have always lived in nature. When we create something, we feel most comfortable when the space feels natural. And we apply this philosophy in both architecture and interiors. For example, in one of our projects in a skyscraper, we brought a Bali-style atmosphere, a lot of greenery and natural decor. So it feels as if you're living in a park. The funny part is that all the plants are artificial, because the client travels a lot and couldn't take care of real ones. So you can use both artificial or real plants, as long as you treat them thoughtfully and maintain the natural feeling of the space. And in the end, the Italian pavilion shows how traditions and modernity can be blended. Outside, Japanese architecture, inside the Colosseum, and around it, crafts, furniture, art and food. And all of it together creates a cohesive and powerful impression. Probably the most beautiful pavilion at the exhibition was the French pavilion. From the outside, it immediately stands out. The facades are made of fabric. Of course, there are real walls underneath, but they're wrapped in fabric that looks like white sails or curtains. Of course, they don't absorb any moisture. It's a moisture-resistant material. The structure has metal chains that hold the curtains, running all the way from the floor to the ceiling, with several of them inside. This creates volume and keeps the curtains from flying away when the wind blows. A really interesting pavilion design. In the center of the pavilion hangs white elements that conceal a metal staircase, but the real beauty and the main idea of the pavilion are inside. The concept is based on a legend from Japanese mythology, Umi no Akaeto, the red thread of fate. And this idea runs through the entire space. Around the pavilion there is white sculptures linked together with a contrasting red thread. You can even catch subtle sensual hints in them. And at the entrance on a black background, a red thread appears. At first it looks like a heartbeat. That's the beginning of the storytelling that step by step leads visitors through the pavilion. The interior is done in black, with emphasis placed on the large artwork. Here, Japanese manga meets Gothic elements. For example, right next to the anime-style drawings you can see an original sculpture brought from the burning Notre Dame. This reflects a modern trend, blending cartoon culture with reality. A really cool detail is the bridge that runs through a dark room. Above it hang thousands of LED dots. There is also special chandeliers controlled by computer algorithms. They light up from images and create three-dimensional shapes. The effect is as if you've stepped into a digital space made possible by modern light control technologies. This story then takes us into a room made entirely of Louis Vuitton suitcases. You hear the clicks of locks opening and closing.
Okay.
And the idea here is that we often meet our loved ones while traveling. The ceiling is made of glass, visually enlarging the space, while the walls consist of countless identical suitcases, repeating over and over. It's rhythm, replication, and at the same time a very Instagrammable solution. From this bright space, visitors then step back into the darkness. Here the suitcases are white, assembled into a sphere. Inside, light imitates the beating of a heart. Colored light is projected onto the white surfaces. This symbolizes the birth of a connection between people. Next, on the large curved screen, they show a dance between two French performers and a Japanese woman on the rooftops of Paris. The camera moves in such a way that it creates the effect of flying around the dancers. The screens shift downward and upward, disappearing from view, and the audience feels as if they themselves are standing on those rooftops. After that, the path leads you up an escalator through a dark corridor. Above, dried flowers are suspended and lit with multicolored lamps, creating a striking effect. And the next space is the wine cave. The idea here is that love can be born over a glass of wine. The whole area is designed in warm terracotta tones. At its center hangs a chandelier shaped like a cluster of grapes. The spheres light up and fade in turn. The ceiling is made of foil-like fabric that casts a shimmering reflection onto the walls. And the walls themselves resemble cliffs with cracks in the shape of a wine bottle. The space keeps alternating, guiding you constantly from dark areas to light ones. The atmosphere is always shifting. Then we enter the Dior zone. And the main technique here is white interiors. White base highlights form and volume, just like when creating a dress. It first sewn in white to see the silhouette. On the walls hang miniature dress models, creating rhythm and repetition. This technique of white interiors and object repetition appears in many pavilions. Next comes in our dark space. Here we see the same chandeliers as at the beginning. Below are two temples, Notre Dame and a Japanese temple, and both of these born in the same year. The story of overcoming tragedy is told through light effects. The temples catch fire when hands appear to restore them. And finally, they shine, filled with energy. The temple models are made in white, and different effects are projected onto them. Flames, light of restoration, radiance. And in the end, the red line appears once again, the symbol of connecting cultures, destiny and people. In the end, the French pavilion is a perfect example of how architecture and interior design can unite a deep idea, while remaining accessible to everyone. Here we see the philosophy of Ume no Akaito, the red thread of fate born in Asia. Along with design and architectural trends, storytelling and digital technologies. White interiors, repeating elements, digitalization and cultural synthesis make this pavilion one of the strongest and most beautiful in the entire exhibition. But let's keep going. What other cool facade and interior solutions did I notice? The trend of structural facade is clearly continuing. For example, the Colombian pavilion looked as if it were built out of rectangular cubes, almost like a block of ice connected together. A similar idea appeared in the Women's Pavilion, designed by Cartier. It also had a structural facade around it, and inside stories of great women and their fight for rights were told. One of the interesting details at the entrance there were doors with black and white images of women projected onto them, and each woman shared her story. And through one of those doors you entered the pavilion. Another interesting solution was the healthcare pavilion. Its facade was made of water. Streams ran down from the roof and collected. In general, water facades turned out to be a popular theme at the exhibition. For example, there was the Black Pavilion, Future of Life, with water also flowing down its sides, while microsprayers around it created mists. It looked very unusual and at the same time gave a real feeling of coolness in the hot climate. And on the center square there was a special columns spraying water, finally that after just a couple of meters a person was no longer visible. The effect was like stepping into a foggy morning in the forest. And water in general became one of the main themes of the exhibition. A striking example is a blue ocean dome. It's three domes surrounded by a shallow pool. And it's not designed like a straight terrace, like a promenade, but instead slows down smoothly, creating an effect of the shoreline. The bottom it's laid with small pedals, a solution that's worked perfectly for decorative ponds or swimming pools. And there are three domes, each made from different materials. One from bamboo, a renewable material. The second from carbon tubes, an expensive and very strong and lightweight material used in airplanes and race cars. And the third from paper. The idea is that the same structure can be realized in completely different ways. Another cool feature, after the exhibition, one of the domes is planned to be moved and turned into a hotel in the Maldives. These kinds of structures can be easily disassembled and rebuilt elsewhere. So the theme of reuse and recycling is strongly emphasized here too. Inside the Blue Ocean Dome they showed how water circulation works. They're using a large white model in the center. The result was not just a beautiful architectural concept, but also an ecological message. And another cool concept that reflects the idea of digitalizing of the real world, shifting from physical space into the computer realm, is the Better Cobain Pavilion. Essentially, it's an open-air pavilion. You step into a garden, and at first it seems there is no roof. But if you look closely, there actually is one. It's made of a metal structure that looks like a fragment from a computer program. It feels as if a shape modeled out of polygons in 3D Max suddenly materialized in reality. And inside there were lots of art objects. For example, stretch red threads. But the most impressive feature was a system of tubes fixed on the roof. They worked like sprinklers, turning on and spraying water to create the effect of rain. It felt like you could have your own tropical downpour right in the park even on a hot day. This technique would work perfectly for gardens, parks and arid regions. Just press a button, you got rain. In the center stood a sphere. Around it, micro sprayers create a mist, while the sphere itself was completely covered in screens. It showed the planet and other visuals. These continued the trends of spherical screens that appeared in other pavilions as well. By the way, speaking of modern technologies, I also really like the Canadian Pavilion. The Canada Pavilion immediately makes its identity clear. It's designed in the shape of giant ice blocks, perfectly reflecting the country's character. But the real magic starts inside. You step into a completely dark space, filled with huge icy cliffs, resembling icebergs. And here they added an element of augmented reality. At the entrance, you're given a tablet. When you point it at the surface of these blocks, life appears inside. You can see a Canadian village, a fisherman with a child by an ice hall, forests, railways and bridges. Essentially, you're traveling through different regions of Canada. And through augmented reality on the tablet, get to know its culture. The next pavilion is Germany. Here too, everything is built around modern technology. At the entrance, you're given a sphere. Here, your personal companion. It can speak several languages, react to how you move around the pavilion and change colors. If you connect it with another sphere, they start flashing together. Inside, a lot of attention is given to recycling and sustainable materials, showing how resources can be reused while preserving nature. One of the things that really stuck with me, in the pavilion there was a huge round sofa. You could lie down on it, and all around were screens and a big mirror where you could see your reflection. At the same time, different visuals were projected, and the whole setup slowly rotated. The sofa sat on a circular floor platform that turned clockwise. This idea could easily be adapted for an interior. For example, in a large house, you could create a living area on a rotating platform, add mirrors and projectors, and you get a super mesmerizing spot, when you can relax and watch the visual change around you. The Czech pavilion was glass and had a spiral form. Inside was a large ramp. You walk in a circle, gradually rising higher. Very convenient, especially for an aging global population. This idea could be useful for villas or private homes. Ramps and an alternative to stairs are becoming a trend. Another interesting element was the glass. The facade was made of specially energy-efficient glass that lets in less heat. In a hot climate like Japan, that's critical. Outside the sun was blazing, but inside it stayed comfortable even with fully transparent walls. Czech is famous for its glaze anyway, and here they showcased uranium glass. It's completely safe, has a bright acid-like shade and glows in the dark. This kind of material can easily be used at home in public spaces. For example, in chandeliers or decorative details that would instantly surprise guests. Just not in bedrooms, since it would interfere with sleep. I just want to say this whole journey has been a trip through different countries and architectural trends. Drop a comments about which idea or ideas you like most and how you think they could be applied at home. If you enjoy the format, share it with your friends and hit like. That way I'll know I should keep making more content like this and do these reviews more often, talking about new technologies and solutions that are changing architecture, design and our life all around us. See you next time!